very first episode of Samples in Action, where each week I'm going to produce a video for you guys where I show you a sample library, we do a quick walkthrough, and I show you how you use that library in a short cue. Today, in episode 1, we're going to be talking about Spitfire Audio Labs. Now, this library is great for any aspiring composer who doesn't necessarily have the most high-quality sample libraries, because a lot of them are really expensive. But Spitfire decided to do this thing to where they give you these libraries for absolutely free. The only thing you got to do is download the Labs player. And let's take a look at what they have so far. So if you go to Spitfire Audio's website, you'll see Labs whenever you search that. And they have a bunch of libraries in here that you guys can use. And some of these, even though I do have some relatively nice string samples and piano samples, I find myself using a lot of these in cues just because they have a cool character to them. So this first library that they released is the soft piano. It's a beautiful prepared felt piano type sound. The next one is strings. They have a very close mic'd sound, and they sound great. You have longs, ensemble, and also the shorts. They released some other ones, a drum set library, a amplified cello quartet, which is a bunch of like aleatoric extended technique stuff, bunch of spooky sounds. Then also the electric piano, a charango, which is like an Andean guitar. It has a really great sound. You guys might find use in that. And then also this new choir library they just posted. I believe this is kind of like a pared down version of the new Eric Whitacre library they released for sale, but this one is the free version, and they still use some of the same singers that Eric uses in a lot of his projects, but they made it a free version for Spitfire Labs. So the only thing that you guys are going to need to actually access this stuff and to be able to write with it is you have to download the Spitfire Labs player, which is, they don't use Contact for this free library, they use their own player called Labs. And it actually works really great. I love the player. It's a really simple user interface, and it works really well. The only other thing you're going to need is this Spitfire Audio app, and that's where you can update all of your libraries. And if you already have Spitfire Audio libraries, then you know what this is. But if you don't have that stuff, then just come to Spitfire's website, download their Labs player, and download this audio app, and you'll be good to go. So let's pop back into Logic now. All right, so I have this short cue that I've written just using the soft piano as well as the strings. We have the long strings here, the short strings right there, and all my pianos here. I did do a little resampling with some reverse stuff. That's just for effect, but you guys don't have to do that. So let's take a look at what this library looks like whenever you just load it up. Typically with Spitfire Audio stuff, you'll be going to Contact. But since this is their new player, you go down here to Spitfire Audio, or wherever it is in your DAW, and you select Labs. So let's open that up. Just for demonstration purposes, I'm gonna kind of crank the volume a little bit. So yeah, this is how it opens up. You have a soft piano, and that's the very first thing that opens up. But if you click this little drop-down menu right here, then you're gonna see all the libraries that I just showed you on their website, right? You have the drums, the charango, cello quartet. See, look at all these crazy categories they have for that. The electric piano, the strings, and the soft piano. So for our purposes, let's start by loading up the soft piano. So this is the user interface right here. And as you guys can see, it's really simple. You just have 3 macros, that's it. And typically, as with most Spitfire stuff, you have dynamics and expression. And the expression is set to the mod wheel. So if you guys are following along, you guys can use that mod wheel. It's right there. And this is just your basic dynamic level. So we have these two. And just out of the box, let me just go ahead and play a couple things for you guys so you guys can hear what it sounds like. Right? A really beautiful sound. One thing I really love about this library is that it has these very subtle felt piano characteristics, but it doesn't sound too felty to where when you're listening to it, you can just hear every hammer. But if you want that, then you can increase the expression. The more you increase the expression, the more character of the instrument you get. So let's just listen to like a simple little ostinato pattern. And obviously you can also control the dynamics with just velocity, right? Kind of loud, kind of soft. But one thing I've noticed about using this is whenever you're using the expression, when you go up to the top, it limits your dynamic range. So if I'm playing loud, and if I'm playing soft, It sounds exactly the same. And that's one thing, it's a little caveat, but that's one thing that's kind of negative about it. But ultimately, I usually work somewhere around the middle to where I have some dynamic range, but I still get some of this like nice little felty sounds. So over here, this third macro you guys can see is for your effects sends, right? And right on this one, we only have reverb. So you can increase that as you go. Let's take a listen to this without any reverb. Super dry, right? It just stops. And let's pull it up a little bit. You get a little bit of a tail. Right around here, if I'm not using any, other reverbs, any like plugins, then this is around where I sit. Got a nice little tail. Very good. And as we keep going, we get into more experimental reverb territory, kind of like trailer music stuff. Right. So we have these really nice open reverby sounds. So that's the soft piano. It's a pretty simple instrument, but one thing I do like about it is that there's some inconsistencies. For example, sometimes you'll have some notes that are kind of out of tune. So we have some, like, I think it's from the Una Corda pedal, how they recorded it, where you have some overlap on some notes where you have these like tiny little dissonances that pop in and out. And sometimes that can add a lot of really good character. So let's take a look now at the strings. I just cycled over by clicking the right arrow, but you can also get there by going down here. So we have the short, the ensemble, and the longs. Let's take a look at the short. Yeah, it has almost this like hip hop type vibe. Right? Just very simple and short. But it does have a really good range. Has a pretty nice sound. Now over here we have dynamic expression again, but you can also do that with the velocity as well. Now let's look at our third macro, which is the effects. We have reverb and then we have tightness. I think they're pretty tight already, so we'll just use the reverb. Let's kick that up a little bit. Sorry, some latency problems here. But yeah, I think this has a pretty nice sound. If you don't have any good short strings, this might be a nice little thing that you guys can use. Very cool. As we go up with the reverb, we have this type of sound, right? But ultimately, yeah, I think this is a really solid short string patch. We also have the ensemble. And typically with Spitfire string libraries, your dynamics are controlled by the mod wheel. So you do the same thing here. Let's just take a listen to this. So for a free string patch, that sounds pretty good to me. But if you listen to it when it's completely dry, I mean, there's still a little tail. You can hear a little tail that was like pre-baked in the room that they recorded it in. But if you're not using any other reverbs, go ahead and kick that up a little bit just to give you a little bit more space and realism. Right. As we go further with the reverb, once again, we get into that experimental territory. Super long tail, right? And yeah, we have the ensemble, then we also have the long. And I think that these two really sound very similar to me. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong about that. But I think they sound very similar. Right, so they sound very similar to the longs, but to the ensemble, I'm sorry. But I like to use them in combination because they have a really good tone that you can just kind of form these two together to make a more complex sound than you normally would have. All right, so now that we've taken a look underneath the hood of the Labs player, let's go ahead and close this out. And we're going to see how these sample libraries work together to form a short cue. So I'll go ahead and play this for you guys now, and then we'll break it down afterwards. All right, so that's the cue. It's short and sweet. Nothing really to write home about, but I think it definitely shows what the Labs can do. So let's take a look at a couple individual sections real quick. The piece starts with the piano, with a simple ostinato and a simple melody. Let's take a listen to that. All right, so that's the basic melody and the basic harmonic structure. We're here in C minor, but this first little pattern is kind of, we have this kind of C minor 7 sound because I'm going from C to G to B flat. And then when the melody comes in, the bass notes change, and we have this kind of Lydian sound where we start A on top, E flat on bottom, or B flat on top, F on bottom, and then out to that open fifth. So we go from a tritone to a fourth to a nice open fifth. And that's pretty much the theme for the whole thing. So while those are playing, we also have the long strings coming in, and they're pretty much just enforcing what the piano's already doing. So we have the low strings taking the octaves, and the high strings are just playing the piano line. Notice here that I've combined a couple of the longs and the ensemble. I think this one's actually an ensemble as well. But yeah, combining these two and setting the reverb levels just slightly differently, even in the box, can give you a bigger and warmer sound than you would out of just a single instance of it. So a lot of the time, I will pair these labs together with each other. So let's take a listen to that string line. And we add the piano. Very cool. And while all that's going on, we have the short strings, which are kind of re-emphasizing the ostinato that the piano's doing. They're very subtle at the beginning. You can barely hear them. They're just there for texture. But here in this section, they kind of take their own life, and they are the main rhythmic motor behind the piece right here between these bars. So let's listen to that real quick. Right, so they have this really nice tight sound. I love that close mic sound that they have on the short strings because it just sounds like they're right there. You can like hear the rosin, and it sounds pretty cool. In this next section, we have the long strings. They come out, let's see, they open up a little bit. I believe we have some relatively nice open chords. So yeah, just some open voicings, and then the voicings die out over here, just leading to octaves and fifths and stuff. So let's listen to that real quick. And as you can hear that I'm using the mod wheel for the expression to get a lot of different flavors out of those string lines, just to make it sound, natural, make it how string players always fade in and fade out, especially if it's like a lyrical type of thing. And over here, those short strings, they continue their pattern, and the piano comes back in with the melody and continues the ostinato pattern. So from here to the end. That's the cue. All right, well, thank you guys so much for watching. In the description of this video, I'm going to put a couple of links to some other free sample libraries that you guys can get. It's always good to have some free tools in the box. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and comment and all that stuff. And next week, I will be producing another video for you guys. I think it's going to be on Oceana, which is a choir library from Performance Samples. So if you guys want to stay tuned for that, just hit the little bell icon. And until then, I will see you guys next week. Happy composing.